All right, what's going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday. Welcome into the show, Green Dot Daily, Action Network's daily sports betting show. I am your host, Brendan Glasheen. We are here every weekday at noon Eastern, streaming live in the Action Network app. Yep, we're in the app, live show, as well as Action Network HQ on Twitter and on YouTube. Green Dot Daily is presented by BetMGM. Use the bonus code ACTION when signing up to get a risk-free bet up to $1,000. Terms and conditions apply. Absolutely loaded Tuesday show. A lot to get to. Jim Root of Three Man Weave. He's also contributing to Action Network this college basketball season. He will join us to break down the two games in the Champions Classic. He also has an angle on another college hoops game tonight. We have Mike Calabrese in on MACtion. Yes, MACtion is still going on. We got MACtion back on this Tuesday. Calabrese has a play. Samantha Previte gives us the latest in fantasy football. Stock up, stock down, waiver wire pickups as your season-long playoffs near. And we also have Matt Moore, who, believe it or not, might be backing the Brooklyn Nets tonight. So I find that very fraudulent of Matt Moore. I hope he sees this, and I hope he hears me because of all the slander he's been giving that Nets organization as of late. And we will also hear from more folks of the Buckets podcast. But we start with the duo from the Favorites podcast, Chad Millman, Simon Hunter, to give their latest outlook in the National Football League. Week 11 picks. Interesting board this week, fellas, because there are so many road favorites, and these lines are getting trickier and trickier as the year goes on because we're starting to really figure out who's good and who isn't all that good. So we'll go to Simon first for his Week 11 NFL pick. What's up, Simon? What do you have?
Yeah, buddy, I feel like this is when it gets good for me because people think they know who's good and who's bad. Where in actuality, they know little to nothing at this point in the season just because it gets weird here. Teams that are really good and they're winning a lot of games, you expect them to drop games. And a perfect matchup here is New England at home this week, -3 against a Jets team that, can we say it's the biggest win of the season they had at home 2 weeks ago against Buffalo, winning by 3? Has to be, right? The public is all in on the Jets. Where just a week before that, they played the same exact Patriots team at home. That Patriots team was on the road and they were -3. So I don't know what happened. They went from being -3 in playing the Jets to 2 weeks later, now they're only -3 at home. That to me is just an overreaction by the public on just one game, what the Jets did in one game against the Bills, where this Patriots team is just very, 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 very well coached. We saw it all year. Coming in, we had our doubts about Belichick and what he's doing on offense, right? He threw in 2 guys who never coached offense before. It's worked out. Patricia, I would love to make fun of the guy. The offense is working. Mac Jones has been bad this year, and they've still been winning games. They brought in a rookie in Zappy, and they won games. So I look at a Patriots team that's just been doubted on all year. I'm one of the people that doubted them, and they keep winning. They keep producing. Now you have a Jets team coming in the public loves. Everyone's buying back in on because they just upset the Buffalo Bills, where I look at a Patriots team, this is where you want to take them. A Belichick team at home, coming off a bye week against a divisional foe, a team that they've dominated the Jets. We've all seen the data, the records, the last 10 years. They've really had the Jets number. So you can still get -3 right now in most books. I know you can at BetMGM. I'd grab that. It's going to go up to -3.5 really soon.
Belichick off a bye, over 500 against the spread in his career in the regular season. Not so great at home off a bye, which is a weird number, but it always feels like when the Patriots play the Jets, it's the Jets who have to play on a short week and the Patriots are coming in off extra rest to prepare. That is not the case this week. It's the Pats off a bye, and the Jets also off a bye. Belichick in his career, 36-11 straight up against the Jets, 26-19-2 against the spread. So you're right. I mean, this was just a couple weeks ago these teams met, and Zach Wilson was playing a game of 500, just throwing it up there and calling out numbers. Chad Millman, Week 11, best bet for us.
I am looking to buy low and sell high every single week. And there's no better spot than the Washington Commanders after ending the Eagles' undefeated run, primetime Monday night, dominant fashion. Like they just control the line of scrimmage. They own the play clock. They owned the rushing game. They really beat up a defensive team in the Eagles that people had a lot of faith in. Playing against the Houston Texans on the road. It is hard to go on the road in the NFL. It's hard to go on the road in the NFL on a short week. It's hard to go on the road in the NFL on a short week when you're not really that good of a team and you're favored. The Texans just lost again. The Texans have been a team that wise guys have been backing all year long. I will be backing the Texans. It opened at 3. It's now up to 3.5 because there's money coming in on the Commanders. The Texans were the unluckiest team in the NFL, according to our luck rankings this past week against the Giants. 2 red zone turnovers, 2 red zone possessions that turned into field goals. I will play the perception game. Give me the Texans plus 3.5.
Wow. Okay. Heineke's been good against the number. 8-2-1 ATS, his last 11 starts. In his last 5, 4-0-1, fading Heineke. He was a good game manager last night, but nothing all that special. But I like it. We're going the other way, taking Houston. So I mentioned off the top, and we discussed this earlier in the day, getting ready for the show, some road favorites, more so in that 4 o'clock window. And then on Monday night, some really head scratching numbers where you're like, And Simon kind of alluded to this, like, this is where they want to get you, but we're going to be smart here on Green Dot Daily. The disgusting road favorite that we might like this week. And Simon, you are turning to McCarthy.
Yeah, and it's, again, we joke all the time how football, the season's kind of a roller coaster. It's so long. There's so many ups and downs, and teams will have highs and low points of their season. I think we might have saw the Cowboys' lowest point, right? They historically, 195 times they had played a game where they were up 14 in the fourth quarter, and the one loss they ever had was last weekend against that Green Bay team. So classic spot of, I think anyone in the world that bet the Cowboys is cursing their names. They can't believe they lost that bet. Well, you flip on the flip side. I mean, people are in on the Vikings, right? They're the hottest team now in football, especially because last night the Eagles lost in a primetime game. That was the game of the week, that Bills-Vikings game. Again, what would this spread be if the Vikings hadn't gotten that fumble on that 1 yard line? Would this number be closer to Cowboys -3, especially if the Cowboys would have won? So to me, it's like, okay, the public is betting this number off what happened last week instead of the entire season, where we've seen it time and time again. The Vikings, they've played well, right? They've had incredible comeback behind wins. They've struggled against good D lines. We saw it against Washington. Washington held them to 7 points until I think it was 5 minutes ago in the fourth quarter, and they came back and beat Washington. The Cowboys are built that way. The Cowboys, they are like the dream version of that Washington team. They have the D line that can shut down. They have the Diggs on the outside that can take away the Jefferson. So just going off the matchup based, I love this from the get-go. And then you already have a platform of these two teams played last year. Again, they're not that different than what they were last year. You know what the difference is? Cooper Rush played in that game, a game they won outright with Dallas. So we're looking at a huge upgrade with Dak in this position. And even better, we have one team coming off the worst loss of their season, the other team coming off the best win of their season. So love this. Love that it moved too. You can get this at -1 right now. It's just a pro spot. The pro versus Joes, right? The public, they're going to tease the Vikings. They're going to be all over this Vikings at a plus number. And the pros they'll just take the value and take Dallas under 3.
Okay, fair enough. And Kirk Cousins off of a win, not great against the number since 2017, 16, 28-2 against the spread. Off of a straight up win. Vikings have won 7 in a row. So the Skol magic in Simon's eyes comes to an end at home against the Dallas Cowboys. Chad, how about you? A disgusting road favorite that you're going to be on this week?
Nothing grosser, like make you want to puke, than betting a big road favorite in prime time. But that's what I'm going to recommend. The San Francisco 49ers are currently more than a touchdown favorite visiting the Arizona Cardinals on Monday night. This line may come down if Kyler Murray ends up playing. If he does, all the better. Continue to bet the Niners. What you're doing with the Cardinals, if Kyler Murray plays, you're going from a backup in Colt McCoy to a statistically mediocre quarterback in Kyler Murray. And this is a team that is going to be one-dimensional on Monday night because the Niners are so good at stopping the rush. I don't mean like total yardage. I mean yards per carry, first downs, running the ball, any kind of explosive play, running the ball. This team at every level of the defense can stop what the Cardinals want to do on the ground. They will make Kyler Murray one-dimensional, and I would not be afraid if Kyler Murray is the guy I'm saying I have to bet against in a one-dimensional game. Also, think about this. Cardinals have won 4 games, have lost 4 games to teams with winning records this year. They've lost those games by an average of more than 13 points per loss. The Niners to me, are going to be the class of the NFC before the season is over. You are getting them at a very good time, only the second game with their full weapons. They were in a trap spot against the Chargers. They still ended up winning that game. Give me the Niners going away Monday night against the Cardinals.
Okay, and this game is in Mexico City, so technically it's not a road favorite.
Forget everything I said.
Well, I mean, it's fair, though. It's, at the end of the day, Cardinals are still the home team.
True.
And Cliff's been good. Cliff's been good as an underdog, but not good at home. The road spot has been good to Cliff and company in Arizona. 5th game at Azteca Stadium in Mexico City, featuring the Niners, who were a big favorite against the Chargers at home this past Sunday night. Okay, fellas, we've actually got some news here I want to share with both of you. It's nothing about it pertains to NFL news. Cooper Kupp is going to injured reserve. So it gets worse for the Rams, and also Dallas Goedert is going to have he's going to be out for the foreseeable future for the Eagles. Either of you have thoughts on this? I mean, it feels like for the Rams that they're done. Simon, you have thoughts on the Rams at this? Are you fading the Rams now more so than ever going forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's classic. You sold your soul to win a ring. They got a bunch of good bounces and they won that ring. And it's all happening now, exactly what they paid for. It's like you have a team that had a weak offensive line and a lot of question marks coming out this year. And Cooper Kupp, I mean, that was the offense. So, yeah, to me, I've already kind of written off the Rams. I think we all did, right? We kind of had the Seahawks and the 49ers as the ones leading that division. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're projecting out, looking ahead, and you're looking at the Rams schedule, I would say it's a huge bonus to the Seahawks and the 49ers and just different teams that have the Rams left on their schedule, just because, yeah, to me, it's over. Like, again, they're not going to tank because they don't have their own draft picks, but at the same time, they just don't have the talent. They're just banged up. So just a bad situation overall there for the Rams. 2
of their next 3, Seahawks and Chiefs on that schedule. They play the Saints on the road this week. And Chad, for Goddard, this is a big deal because Jalen Hurts loves this guy. Well, he loves him against the Commanders, that's for sure. But that's a reflection as to why the line is now moved to 6.5 this week against the Colts for another gross favorite on the road in Philadelphia. But then again, they're coming off a loss, so it makes a little bit of sense. But Goddard being out, he's kind of a binky in the passing game from Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. And actually, when we were watching the game last night, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman pointed out a lot of times when other players, other tight ends for the Eagles were catching balls, how infrequently they do catch balls, because Dallas Goedert is so dominant as the tight end weapon for Jalen Hurts. So this will be something that obviously they're going to have to manage, going to have to adjust, but I do think it impacts a lot of how Jalen Hurts plays his game.
Okay, very good. By the way, some movement on BetMGM. 7.5 now, Chad. You can get the Niners instead of 8.
Fantastic. I'm doubling down.
Wonderful. Great stuff. Check out the Favorites podcast every Wednesday and Friday morning, wherever you catch your podcast. You can also catch the Favorites crew live a day earlier on AMP. Just download the free AMP app and follow the Favorites to join the fun every Tuesday and Thursday live. Chad, Simon, thanks as always. Okay, here is your Tuesday college basketball market report. A marquee matchup in the Champions Classic, Duke and Kansas. It's our first ranked matchup of the season. Money coming in on the Blue Devils, 61% of the bets, 59% of the money, and that total creeping around 144.5, 145. Money coming in on the under. Folks have faith in the defenses of the Jayhawks and the Blue Devils. With all that being said, we welcome in Jim Root, who covers college basketball for 3-Man Weave. We're very excited to have him contributing to Green Dot Daily as well as Action Network during the season. Jim, this is a great game that we're going to have our eyes on, of course. We'll have another one to talk about in just a moment. But when it comes to Duke and Kansas, what jumps out to you in this matchup, and how do you make a decision how you want to make a play on this game?
You mentioned the defenses, and that's what I've got my eye on. And it's specifically Duke's defense. They've been sensational so far this season. Granted, they've only played 2 ASUN opponents, but they've held them to 0.73 and 0.53 points per possession. That really kind of jumped out at me, especially because in the preseason, John Shire was talking about how great this team could be defensively. They also got Derek Lively back last game, potentially an elite shot blocker. So the back line of that defense is secure here. They've got a couple of really good matchups for Kansas' best scorers, like Mark Mitchell and Jacob Grandison can handle Grady Dick and Jalen Wilson. So I've been looking at the Blue Devils here. You mentioned the money coming in. A little bit of that is my money on Blue Devils plus 1.5. It's now flipped over to -1, but I think it's still worth a look there for Duke.
Okay, and there's no Bill Self still for Kansas, currently suspended, so not coaching in this game against Duke. How about Kentucky and Michigan State? This game actually starts off the Champions Classic in Indianapolis. They tip at 7 o'clock. What's the angle here? I know there's some injury news we have to keep eyes on as it pertains to the Kentucky side.
Yeah, that's the big bit of information here. Is Oscar Tshiebwe going to play? If he plays, how good will he look? He's coming off an arthroscopic knee procedure, has not gotten in the game yet. I know he's been doing some work at practice, but you have to wonder if the explosion is going to be there. A guy coming off a surgery like that, he's a big guy. His game is built around his athleticism, his effort level. Is he going to be able to sustain that? Maybe he's on a bit of a pitch count and minutes limit. That's something to look out for. Michigan State's much more battle tested, though. They went out to San Diego. They played on the carrier. They got a really solid performance out of Mady Sissoko inside. I think that was the big concern with Michigan State coming into this year was, do they have interior defense, rebounding, a lob threat for pick and roll action? And he emerged as that on the carrier against Gonzaga. So I'm looking at Michigan State potentially here on the side, but I haven't bet it yet. I also kind of like the under. Both the last two meetings between these two in the Champions Classic have gone under. Kentucky's won them both, but I think we see this game be a little bit tighter. Teams trying to figure things out offensively. Lean towards the under in this one, Brendan.
Okay, 79% of the money coming in on under 141.5, according to the Action app right now in Michigan State, Kentucky. I'm always fascinated, too, by Coach Cal. Like, it feels like more nowadays for his teams. Now, he's got a balance of seniors and freshmen on this team, but from an experience standpoint, it feels like they're still trying to play their best basketball later in the year, which is the goal for everybody. But more so lately than previous years under Cal, growing pains, I feel like, tend to be more of a thing for the Kentucky Wildcats early in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned experience, and it's not all experience in Kentucky's system, though. You know, he's bringing in a lot of transfers.
Right.
CJ Frederick didn't play last year. He was hurt, but him and Antonio Reeves, guys coming in making their first year of impact on the court. That's different than guys that have been in the program for 3 or 4 years. So I agree. It's going to take a little while for them to mesh, but I think Michigan State's still figuring out a little bit as well.
I feel like it's a rule of thumb now. We have to mention the word transfer whenever we do a college basketball.
Portal. Got to say it.
The portal gives, the portal takes. That's the way I look at it this year in college hoops and years to come, I would guess. Okay, we're turning the shot clock on. 30 seconds or less. Your favorite pick elsewhere tonight in college hoops.
I'm going with an under, an ugly one. Wisconsin is hosting Green Bay, in-state rivalry here. Will Ryan, the son of Badger royalty Bo Ryan, coming into Kohl Center. The last two meetings when Will Ryan has been there have been ugly. Under by 20-plus points. Green Bay has barely cracked 40 points either time. So I think this one's going to be ugly again. I saw 132 in the market. It might have come down a hair, but I think it's going to be well under. Slow-paced slog of a game. I think we see an under there in Madison.
All right, Jim Root of Three Man Weave. He's on Twitter at Second Chance Points. You can follow his college basketball coverage there. Also, over in the Action app, he will have a write-up on tonight's slate as well as slates going forward. Jim, thanks so much for the time on Green Dot Daily.
Appreciate you having me.
Oh, yes, we're in a world of college hoops and college football because it's Tuesday MACtion, baby. Ball State, Ohio. One of the matchups today, Ball State is a home dog this evening, and then you've got Toledo, big favorite against Bowling Green at home. Let's find out what the Big Bets on Campus crew is thinking. One of our members, Mike Calabrese.
Thanks, Brendan. For my top MAC play here in Week 12, I'm actually targeting an under between two teams that are actually pretty solid offensively, but it all breaks down to the weather. In ideal weather conditions, this would be a clear overplay for me, given Ohio's hot streak on offense with the Maple Missile, Curtis Rourke. But unfortunately, weather has put this game into question. There's going to be snow, that's for sure, but really the importance of sustained winds in the 10 to 15 mile an hour range are really what's going to ground these passing attacks. And if Ball State simply relies on Carson Steele, arguably the best running back in the G5, to eat up clock in this game, he's going to be able to get it done because he's an absolute battering ram. The one thing he is not is a running back who can pop the home run play. He has just 6 carries of 20 yards or more all season long. So I see this being a slog between these two teams and the quarterbacks really having issues completing anything longer than 10 yards down the field. So I like this under, whether it's at 55, 54, I played all the way down to 53. And it's worth noting that you should check in before kickoff to make sure that those wins are over that 15-mile-an-hour threshold. The Action Network app and our specialists like to point out this is the threshold to really impact the passing game. As a reminder, Colin Wilson, Brett McMurphy, and I will be back at 4 p.m. today, providing an entire breakdown of all the midweek MACtion for our Mac special show.
Mike, we look forward to it again. MACtion, the MACtion show later today, streaming live at 4 p.m. Eastern. You can find the show on Action HQ Twitter, YouTube, but also in the app. The entire crew on your screen with Mike Calabrese as well. We'll be joining you, Big Bets on Campus crew, to break down MACtion. NBA, man, there's a lot of sports today. It's great. NBA games to watch on this Tuesday. Here's your market report. Money coming in on the Memphis Grizzlies. However, most of the bets on the Pelicans. They are a short favorite at home, Pels and Grizz. And then you've got the Brooklyn Nets as a dog visiting the Sacramento Kings. Money coming in on Brooklyn. What say you, Matt Moore?
Yeah, I'm going to ride New Orleans. They're back home. Pelicans money line is minus 115 against the Grizzlies. Desmond Bane is questionable for tomorrow. I think the most important player for the Grizzlies is not John Morant, it's Desmond Bane. I think his versatility on defense and his ability to stretch the floor is really important for that team because they're an up and down team and they need someone that can shoot threes, and that's Desmond Bane. So I do like the Pelicans. They only made 8 threes in their previous game. This is something that Jay taught me. They also have a rest advantage tomorrow. I think it's only their 3rd game in 6 nights, whereas the Memphis Grizzlies have 1 day less rest. So I think the fresher team, the more healthy team is going to be the Pelicans tomorrow night.
My numbers all kind of indicate the Nets are undervalued right now. I tore them to pieces in the early season. They were a joke. They were laughable. Whether certain people aren't playing currently. And it kind of seems like without certain people, they might be able to play a more serious brand of basketball, like a professional basketball team, when certain people aren't available. So I love the Nets in this spot. I think they win this game outright. I'm willing to go ahead and back it. So I'm going to go ahead and put the full unit play on the +2. I'll grab the points. And I'll do a half unit on the money line. I'll go ahead and go that far on it. I feel like they're the right side here, and it not being the last game of the road trip is probably promising. I'll look at maybe to fade them when they get back. That's always a good spot to fade teams. So it's based pretty much solely on the number, but I can't get there. And if you say like, well, the Kings just beat the Warriors. Do you think the Warriors right now are better or worse than the Nets? I kind of gotta tell you, I think the Nets are better than the Warriors right now, especially on the road. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, the Warriors kind of been telling us who they are.
Oh, I see how it goes. Matt Moore, live yesterday on Green Dot Daily, does not discuss the Nets, but the Nets are in action tonight, and he's picking them against Sacramento. Interesting work there by Matt Moore. You can catch the Buckets podcast every weekday, wherever you get your podcasts. Buckets, Action Network's NBA betting podcast. We shift gears back to the NFL. We're joined by Action Network fantasy insider, expert Samantha Previte joining us, and it's time for a little stock up, stock down. We'll start with stock up. So based on what you saw from the weekend, we're 10 weeks into this thing, Samantha. I think any preseason notions, any thoughts before the year, those are out the window. We've got a sample size now, but whose stock is still rising, you think, right now?
Yeah, someone who I do think is on the rise is Rondale Moore. He missed the first 3 weeks of the year and has been trending upwards. He is the wide receiver 10 in half PPR over the last 3 weeks, recorded season highs this week in LA in targets, catches, and receiving yards. He's been targeted a whopping 23 times in the past 2 weeks and seems to have really solidified his role as the Cardinals slot receiver. There are extra targets to go around with Marquise Brown on IR and potentially even more with star tight end Zach Ertz out for the rest of the year. DeAndre Hopkins is the locked-in wide receiver 1, but Moore could be right behind him and could end up being a fantasy wide receiver 2 rest of way.
And as far as stock down, and that's a good call there on Rondale Moore. Colt McCoy was looking his way. Kyler, maybe take notes. Maybe the good news too about the Cardinals is now being on in-season Hard Knocks. You can get some insight, good or bad, about how the team might be doing from a morale standpoint.
Kingsbury be fired on Hard Knocks?
Yeah, well, we'll leave that to Brandon Anderson. He leads that train. But yes, as it pertains to what Kyler is feeling, or Colt McCoy now in this case, in the locker room, it's something to keep an eye on. As it pertains to stock down, I was just doing a quick Google search on the player you're about to talk about, and I don't think I've ever seen this before, outside of a trade at the trade deadline, that a player loses his captaincy this late into the season, and that's Brandon Cooks. Explain.
Yes, so we actually talked about Cooks on Convince Me this Sunday, and I think no one was excited to start him. He missed week 9 amid fairly public drama, to your point about him wanting out of Houston. His wish was not granted. He did play in week 10, but was held to 4 catches for 37 yards. Meanwhile, Nico Collins returned from a groin injury, caught 5 of 10 for 49 yards and a touchdown. Cooks has only finished as a wide receiver 2 or better once all season. So I don't know how much better things are realistically going to get for Cooks on this team that seems to be on the fast track to the number 1 overall pick.
Feels like it. And Lovie Smith is stubborn. They just run the ball. That's all they do, right? They just run the football no matter what the score is, it feels like. Even that Philly game a couple weeks ago on Thursday night, just like you need that little urgency here. And Brandon Cooks is probably like, well, what am I doing here? So, Okay, good stuff. Let's shift gears to waiver wire pickups, potentially who might be available based on percentages and leagues. Who are your 3 players that you're looking at?
Yeah, so there were a lot of injuries this week for sure. So I need you to pick up Christian Watson, who is out there in over 90% of leagues. Maybe he is everything we hoped the preseason phenom Romeo Doubs would be. Watson positively shined in the Packers' thrilling OT victory over the Cowboys, saw a season-high 84% of snaps, hauled in 3 touchdowns and 107 yards against a tough Cowboys pass defense. Finished as the wide receiver 2 for the week. Meanwhile, Allen Lazard was unremarkable. So with no Romeo Doubs, no Randall Cobb, there really could be an opportunity for Watson to emerge as the solidified wide receiver 2 and maybe even the wide receiver 1. Next week, the Packers face the Titans, who have allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers this year. Second, I want you to check out Rachaad White, who is out there in about 56% of leagues. The only reason he is not my top waiver ad is because of his week 11 bye. But if you can afford to, you need to pick him up. He operated as the Bucs lead back this week and finishes the RB20. He outtouched Leonard Fournette 22-15, outgained him 105-57, and outsnapped him 48-22, which was the first time all year that Fournette did not dominate snaps. I don't think this is just an anomaly because White has been trending upwards. Fournette did leave the game early with a hip injury, though that was pretty late in the game. I think that he's expected to be fine, but this could develop into a 1A, 1B situation. White could be a very valuable fantasy asset after the bye against the Browns' vulnerable run defense, which ranks dead last in rush DVOA. And then lastly, check to see if Gus Edwards is available. He is out there in just over half of leagues. Edwards missed week 9 with a hamstring injury but in his season debut and first game back since tearing his ACL, he was actually phenomenal. 16 rushes for 66 yards and a pair of touchdowns, finished as the RB 8.5 PPR. In his absence, Kenyon Drake has stepped up, but when they were both healthy in week 7, Edwards outsnapped Drake 23-17 and outgained him 66-5. I expect Edwards will be leading this backfield once healthy, which could be as soon as this week after the Ravens week 10 bye. So I am all aboard the Gus bus against my Carolina Panthers, whose defense has allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to running backs this year.
Very good. The everlasting roller coaster, which is the Ravens backfield. Who will be the running back for Lamar Jackson? Maybe it is Lamar Jackson, but good stuff. Samantha Previte, great insight as always. Find her on the Action app and find her over on actionnetwork.com for the latest in fantasy football. Have a great week. Thanks for the time.
Thank you.
All right, we're not done just yet. If you watch the end, because you got to watch till 000s are on the clock if you have a play in an NFL game, really any game. But wow, last night, Devontae Smith was the recipient of a pitch, aka a lateral on the longest yard play for the Eagles with one last prayer to try and come back and beat the Commanders. So Devontae Smith was over his receiving yards prop of 52.5. And then by trying to lateral the ball again on a backward pass, he loses 14 yards. So his prop did not hit last night. We bring in Tim Kalinowski for reaction. He is our guy over on the Action Network TikTok page. He's really just doing a good job surfing the social waters of the betting world when it comes to our Action social content. This, I can't imagine this went over well with people that had Devontae Smith, who I think a lot of folks thought he was going to have a nice game. And he did. He looked pretty good. A.J. Brown was really a non-factor. And Smith got burned because he was just trying to help his team win, and people don't like that.
Nope, and he was the birthday boy as well. So he was off to a good start with the reception. People were excited, and what a horrific end to Devontae Smith's night. I mean, what is he really? I mean, they lost, so he cares. But if you owned Devontae Smith in fantasy, if you bet him his over receiving yards, this is why, it's funny. My mom is, I'm living at home, my parents, and my mom's trained now. She knows when I'm watching a game like this and the play does not matter and something like that happens. And she turns to me and says, that's not good, is it? She's like, that either won or lost people a lot of money. I'm like, this is working out, Mom. Like, we're getting better at this. I like living at home. You're on the ball. So, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, people are not happy. This is one of those things where you love having Twitter because you just search Smith on Twitter and it is screenshots of people's tickets everywhere. I mean, it's hard to see. Some people lost in fantasy by just say, 0.1, 0.3, whatever it was, just because of that fumble. And this is something that we saw earlier in the year with Chase Claypool as well. So like you said, you have to watch until the very last second.
Yeah, the Claypool play, he lost 5 yards by throwing it back to Najee Harris, who then fumbled, and that led to a touchdown at the end. So those of you that like to bet live unders, that may have burned you last night as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I say, people, this is how you look at it. A lot of people say, I don't understand. How is this rusted? This is how you have to look at it. Once Smith receives that backwards pass, say he took it 80 yards from there to the house, you would have been credited with your Devontae Smith 80 plus yards, whatever have been, plus a touchdown, receiving touchdown.
Right.
So if you're going to get the positive, you're going to get the negative as well. So once he receives that backwards pass, as the NFL likes to call it, that's game on, that's live, and that's negative receiving yards for Smith. And it's funny enough because he doesn't even get a reception on the play either, just credited or discredited rather with the negative receiving yards. And look at it. If you had Smith on the alt lines over receiving yards, those are popular in the same game parlay. He ends with 39, and just the tickets that people were seeing screenshots of these tickets on Twitter. I really felt bad. And it's a good thing I didn't have it because I've done nothing but talk about this all day. So thank goodness I avoided it.
Yeah. So again, just for clarity, this drive started at the 10. He caught the lateral at the 5, and then he threw it back the other direction, which led to the Washington celebration. That was a fun celebration by the Commanders to end the game. Okay. Well, Tim, I have a feeling we're not done yet in the NFL. Like, this stuff will continue to happen. Of course, game script wise, folks thought if anyone was going to have to pull off a play like this, it was going to be the Commanders, not the Eagles in desperation time. So have fun with all the people continuing to whine about this on social media.
Oh, I mean, it keeps me employed. It's great, but it's funny when I saw the play happen, I'm like, was that the spread? No. Was that the total? I'm like, only like alts or lives. And I'm like, oh, now I found it. So if you just look closely, someone got burned when you see 000s, most likely in these primetime games, especially.
Can I ask you one last question before we go?
Yeah.
Why do you put your mother through this?
I mean, look, relatively, that's about as a good day for me. She sees a lot. My family, I give them a lot of credit. They say I'm a lot. The neighbors say that they can hear me when I'm home, when I'm back from school because of how loud I am. Those are neighbors. So I do feel bad, but I can't really help it. I talk loud. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, one of these days, once Action Network wins an award for TikTok account of the year, you can tell your mom you're the real MVP.
Yeah, no, she's very understanding. Not.
Okay. I can already picture the Durant press conference, but it's you up there pointing down. So Tim Kalinowski, great job as always. And look forward to having more Bad Beat info from you.
Yes, as long as I avoid it. I'll talk about it until the cows come home, but I want to avoid it at all costs. I might just not even do any primetime betting because if one of these and I'm on it, I mean, I don't even know if I'll be able to show up and do the show.
Yeah, you'll keep doing it.
Yep. Money's green, right?
Okay, good stuff. Tim Kalinowski, find him over in the Action Network TikTok page. Great stuff. As a reminder, you can follow Green Dot Daily. We have an account for our show over in the Action Network app. You'll never miss a pick. So go to the app, go to our show account, and you will find all the picks from the show. Want to get in there, especially from the favorites guys, because their picks are for this coming weekend in the NFL. So you want to make sure you get on those games before any lines move. You'll find picks from Chad, Simon, NBA guys, Jim Root, college basketball as well. So get involved. As a reminder, Green Dot Daily is presented by BetMGM. Use the bonus code ACTION when signing up to get a risk-free bet. You can get up to $1,000. The terms and conditions apply. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Big show today. A lot going on across the land of sports. Thanks to the folks behind the scenes, all of our guests today. I'm Brendan Glasheen. We return tomorrow at noon Eastern for Green Dot Daily. Good luck. Get some green dots tonight, and we'll see you tomorrow.